History of Motorola, the first mobile phone company and the civil wars that caused the empire to fade. Starting from the production of devices to support national security, Motorola has transformed and become the first mobile phone manufacturer in the world with revenue of tens of billions of dollars each year. But because of changing times and internal struggles, the once mobile king had to give up his throne and eventually teeter on the brink of disappearing. Once the first mobile phone company in the world with huge revenue, but now Motorola is only a shadow of the past. Started as a security equipment manufacturing company, Paul Galvin was born at Harvard on June 27, 1895. The Motorola brand was founded by Paul Galvin and started as Galvin Manufacturing Corporation in 1928 before the Great Depression. Just 2 years after its founding, the company made its first major breakthrough when it commercialized car radio equipment by eliminating noise interference under the hood. The Motorola brand was founded by Paul Galvin and started as Galvin Manufacturing Corporation in 1928. One morning, Paul Galvin came up with the idea of choosing the word moto in the word automotive, meaning a line of radio products used on cars, combined with the successful product name Victrola to name it. Gave the company a new name Motorola. When Paul and his brother Joe built the company, they created an environment that encouraged people to create and fail, then learn and create again. Later, Paul Galvin changed the company name to Motorola, which is a combination of the words automotive and Victrola. After that, Motorola began creating technologies and devices that were sold to other businesses, especially in the defense and security sectors. The two-way radio used by the police or the walkie-talkie that soldiers carried during World War II and the radio system for officers to communicate, were all created by Motorola under Paul Galvin. Motorola began creating technologies and devices that were sold to other businesses, especially in the defense and security sectors. Martin Cooper, who led the development of Motorola's first cell phone, said public safety is what we did. Working at Motorola is more than just having a job. But that's the mission. Martin Cooper once said that working at Motorola is more than just having a job. But that's the mission. Turn to a new page. In 1942 a tragedy occurred. Paul Galvin's wife Lillian was killed by an intruder in their Evanston home. After the death of his wife and inheritance tax issues, the Galvin family turned Motorola into a public company but kept it as a family company. In 1956, Paul decided to step down as president and let his 34-year-old son, Robert Williams, Bob Galvin, take over leadership of the company. After many incidents, in 1956, Paul Galvin let his son Robert William, Bob Galvin take over the leadership of the company. What the father built nationally has been developed globally by the son. Bob Galvin is considered one of the greatest American industrialists of the 20th century. When Bob led Motorola from 1959 to 1990, the company's annual revenue skyrocketed from $290 million to nearly $11 billion. He turned Motorola into one of the 50 largest companies in America. When Bob led Motorola from 1959 to 1990, the company's annual revenue skyrocketed from $290 million to nearly $11 billion. Bob Galvin and his successors firmly believed that competition drove performance. Since Motorola faced very little external competition, they had to create competition internally. For example, CEOs have to compete with each other and bonuses will go to those who do the best. Since Motorola faced very little external competition, they had to create competition internally. Internal competition helped Motorola develop two businesses during the Bob Galvin era: semiconductor and telecommunications. Motorola's telecommunications division specializes in making networks, radios and phones for government and business customers. The semiconductor division provides chips to telecommunications units and to outside companies such as Apple. Internal competition has helped Motorola develop two business segments: semiconductor and telecommunications. Based on financial strength, Bob Galvin has invested large sums of money in establishing and improving Motorola's production lines. In addition, he also spent a large amount of money on employee training and recruitment programs and applied the famous Six Sigma management program to the entire enterprise. This model has been awarded the Malcolm Baldrige Award by the U.S. government. Based on financial strength, Bob Galvin has invested large sums of money in establishing and improving Motorola's production lines. With those comprehensive and thorough preparation steps, Bob Galvin has helped Motorola launch a series of new high-quality products such as laptops, cameras, microprocessors for all kinds of computers, and other devices. Basic equipment of telephone and internet networks, amplifiers, speakers, radios, landlines. Bob Galvin has helped Motorola launch a series of new high-quality products such as laptops, cameras, phones, etc. Attack the Chinese market. Right from the time when Japanese products were very popular in the world, Bob Galvin realized that one day China would surpass Japan. So when the Chinese market began to reform, he had a strategy to join hands with Chinese officials to let Motorola establish production in this country, and with one condition: Motorola must teach Chinese employees and Chinese suppliers how to make good products for global customers. To be able to attack the Chinese market, Motorola must teach local employees and suppliers there its technologies. Bob knows that China will gradually copy the company's technology and compete with Motorola. But the Chinese market is too large, and he believes that even a small piece of the Chinese market is worth investing in. Bob knows that China will gradually copy the company's technology and compete with Motorola, but he is willing to trade. So Bob brought Motorola's best technology to China, and he also built the company's factories there that will produce according to the strictest standards. Hundreds of Chinese suppliers, including state-owned enterprises, follow Motorola's production methods. Motorola has helped China build a national telecommunications network, using advanced American technology. Of course, along with that, Bob has built a large market in China. So Bob brought Motorola's best technology to China. Motorola has helped China's telecommunications develop. Historical initiatives. Among Motorola's innovations, the mobile phone is considered the most influential product. Originating from the idea of a device that supports communication between police officers while working, Motorola turned it into a greater product. Among Motorola's innovations, the mobile phone is considered the most influential product. The idea of creating a phone that uses a wireless network and can be carried anywhere immediately convinced Bob Galvin. Martin Cooper, a leader and researcher of the company, was the one who came up with this idea and also ran the risky project. Motorola spent $100 million on mobile phone development project. Mobile phone manufacturing project run by Martin Cooper. Motorola spent $100 million on mobile phone development project. In 1973, the world's first cell phone call was made by Martin Cooper. However, it was not until 1984 that the first DynaTAC cell phone model was ready for the market. From generation DynaTAC, DynaTAC Ultra, MicroTAC, StarTAC to the W220, W208, W370 or I450, I455, I425. Immediately after appearing, they conquered customers not only in America but in most countries in the world. After that, the cell phone business exploded. In 1973, the first cell phone call on the world was made by Martin Cooper. After that, the cell phone business exploded. Serious mistake. It was the cell phone that made Motorola flooded with money. However, the above success also brought a toxic wind into corporate culture. Employees in the public security department, who produce products for security and fire departments, couldn't help but feel excited when they saw the cell phone department getting richer. The above success also brought a toxic wind into corporate culture. Internal jealousy in the company and mutual jealousy. Motorola people call this the era of tribal warfare. The struggles and fights between the leaders shook the whole company. CEOs William Weiss (1986–88) and then George Fisher (1988–93) acknowledged the tragedy of infighting and did little to stop it. As a result, there is no connection plan between the network technology segment and the mobile phone technology segment. Motorola people call this the era of tribal warfare. As a result, the network technology segment and the mobile phone technology segment are not connected. The two sides operate completely independently and in completely different directions. Motorola's network engineers all use phones with components manufactured by Qualcomm, while Qualcomm is one of Motorola's fiercest competitors in the semiconductor segment. There was not a single Motorola phone in the building, a Motorola employee recalled. Although the mobile device division is having tough competition against Qualcomm, the two sides operate completely independently and in completely different directions, viewing each other as opponents. In 1994, Motorola ranked 23rd on the Fortune 500 list with revenue of $22 billion and profits of nearly $2 billion. This year, 60% of mobile phones sold in the US were from Motorola, and the phone network contributed nearly 65% of the company's revenue. It took a while for this tragedy of internal war to show up in the company's numbers, partly because revenue from cell phones was so large. It took a while for the tragedy of the internal war to show up in the company's numbers, partly because revenue from cell phones was so large. Encounter with Nokia. But Motorola is about to fall into the abyss because at this time its Finnish rival Nokia begins to shine. By the time Gary Taker finished his 4 years as CEO of Motorola in 1997, Nokia had surpassed Motorola as the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer. And for the next 15 years, Nokia continuously maintained its unique position. In 1997, Nokia surpassed Motorola as the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer and held it for 15 consecutive years. In 1997, Motorola's board of directors brought in a new Galvin member to change its fortunes. Chris Galvin, Bob's son, knew the company better than anyone. He spent nearly 2 decades working with his father. Chris Galvin inherited a huge fortune with 60 different businesses spanning the world. But nearly all of them were weak. The mobile phone segment is the worst. In 1997, Chris Galvin, Bob's son, took over to lead the company. However, Motorola's situation at that time was quite bad. World fluctuations also seemed to cause Chris Galvin difficulties. The technology and telecommunications crisis that began in 2000 adversely affected Motorola shares. In 2001 alone, the company's revenue decreased by nearly $8 billion, with a loss of nearly $4 billion. The technology and telecommunications crisis that began in 2000 also adversely affected Motorola stock. To limit the damage, Chris fired 56,000 of the company's nearly 150,000 employees. In addition, he also closed factories. At this time, Motorola only has one bright spot, which is the production of public safety equipment because it received many orders after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. To limit the damage, Chris fired 56,000 of the company's nearly 150,000 employees. In addition, he also closed factories. Legendary Motorola Razer. In the mobile phone segment, Chris hopes to develop a new phone model with a sexy design. And Razer was born with a slim and almost entirely metal design. But Chris left Motorola until the day Razer was born. 3 months after Chris Galvin left, the company's business numbers began to reverse upward. Razer deserves to be a blockbuster, with 50 million units sold in the first 2 years of its release. At the end of 2004, Motorola's market value reached $42 billion. Razer deserves to be a blockbuster, with 50 million units sold in the first 2 years of its release. At the end of 2004, Motorola's market value reached $42 billion. With the success of Razer, Motorola started making billions in cash. During Ed Zander's first 2 years as CEO, Motorola shares doubled. The new CEO fully exploited the success of Razer and released many devices in different colors and shapes with some new features. With the success of Razer, Motorola started making billions in cash. The company fully exploited the success of Razer. CEO Ed Zander is a very interesting person in the history of Motorola. Because one of the decisions he made that was considered the worst was shaking hands with his friend at Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs. Together, the two companies Motorola and Apple created the Motorola iTunes phone, the first phone to connect to Apple's music store. Ed Zander believes that working with Apple, Motorola can prosper again. But reality has proven the opposite. Motorola has failed to the point of going bankrupt. CEO Ed Zander made a bad decision to partner with Apple to create the Motorola iTunes phone. Downhill without stopping. In 2007, when Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone model, Zander's Motorola was still selling the Razer, trying to boost sales with new versions. However, profit margins dropped to an all-time low. An analyst calculates that, on average, Motorola only earns about $5 per device sold. In 2007, when Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone model, Zander's Motorola was still selling Razer, but the profit was very low. Another mistake of Motorola at this time is that Zander has never paid attention to the Chinese market the way Galvin CEOs did. In 2007, Samsung surpassed Motorola in phone sales for the first time and Motorola never regained its head. In 2007, Samsung surpassed Motorola in phone sales for the first time and Motorola never regained its head. In 2008, Motorola decided to separate the mobile phone segment from the public and enterprise security equipment segment. At this time, of course, Zander is no longer CEO. Motorola's board of directors then selected Greg Brown as the new CEO to run the enterprise and security devices segment. Motorola specifically hired someone to be co-CEO with Brown. That is Sanjay Jha, a former coup of Qualcomm, who understands both hardware and software of telecommunications. In 2008, Motorola decided to separate the mobile phone segment from the public and enterprise security equipment segment. Competition with Apple iPhone. At Motorola, 60 managers work on dozens of different phone models. While at Apple, all of the company's talents are focused on a perfect phone model. Jha realized he had to make a successful phone for Verizon, which at that time was competing with AT&T as the exclusive seller of iPhones. Jha realized he had to make a successful phone for Verizon to win against the iPhone. And finally, Motorola's new Droid phone model was released in October 2009. In the first few months, Motorola sold more Droid devices than Apple iPhones. By the end of 2010, after 4 years of terrible losses, Motorola's phone segment was profitable again. Motorola's new Droid phone model was released in October 2009. By the end of 2010, Motorola's phone segment was profitable. However, for longtime Motorola fans, this success brings mixed joys and sorrows. Droid is not a product capable of changing the world. Furthermore, Motorola has shown the world how to make a good Android phone. Immediately, the company's old competitors, especially Samsung, emerged to take over the market. Unable to survive, the company was forced to sell itself to Google. However, for longtime Motorola fans, this success brings mixed joys and sorrows. Motorola's first phone after coming under Google was Moto X, released in August 2013. Moto The sensors in Moto X also know when you are driving and automatically switch to hands-free mode. Moto X is truly a standout phone model among countless Android smartphones. Motorola's first phone after coming under Google was Moto X, released in August 2013. However, initial sales of the Moto, the profit margins of consumer electronics, especially phones, have become a disaster for Motorola Mobility. However, initial sales of the Moto The above failures forced Google's CEO Larry Page to sell Motorola to Chinese company Lenovo for a cheap price of $2.9 billion United States dollars. This price is not even 1/4 of the price that Google paid 20 months ago. The deal helped Lenovo become the world's fourth largest phone manufacturer and for the first time access the US market. The above failures forced Google's CEO Larry Page to sell Motorola to Lenovo for a cheap price of $2.9 billion United States dollars. Just a shadow once upon a time? Yang Yuanqing, CEO of Lenovo at that time, believed that Motorola's presence would help the company compete directly with big names like Apple and Samsung. But it seems that everything is not as he expected when every quarter people see Lenovo losing more and more money. But it seems that everything is not as expected by Lenovo's CEO, when each quarter people see Lenovo losing more and more money. More than 40 years after launching the first mobile phone version, since 2016, the name Motorola officially disappeared from the market. Lenovo announced that all smartphones produced by the company will bear the Lenovo name, while the Moto brand will still be used for some high-end phones. In early March 2018, half of Motorola employees quit their jobs at the office located in Chicago, USA. In China, the company's smartphone market share, although still ranked in the top 10, is a very small percentage. More than 40 years after launching the first mobile phone version, since 2016, the name Motorola officially disappeared from the market. Since acquiring Motorola until now, Lenovo has hardly had any really bright products come out. When asked, Lenovo still said that the company's lack of profit is just a current difficulty. It's unclear whether the name Motorola will still be mentioned or will be forgotten, and people will only remember Motorola as a once-in-a-lifetime symbol. The name Motorola is sinking into oblivion, and people only remember Motorola as a once-in-a-lifetime symbol.